Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I'm Kevin Klein. I am joined by two of my colleagues from the Winnipeg Sun. We have columnist Jeff Currier and columnist Royce Koop, who is also a professor of political sciences at the University of Manitoba. Gentlemen, let's jump right in. I wrote an article this weekend in the Winnipeg Sun after seeing the news that the Manitoba Premier Wab Canoe continues to be a rock star when it comes to ratings among premiers. He's over 60, or he's at 68%. I think it's the seventh time that he's been over the 60% mark in popularity. What are people basing this on?
Well, he hasn't done anything catastrophic yet, I guess.
Or
he
at
hasn't.
all.
He hasn't. Well, right, but he hasn't made the big mistake so far. It's been over a year, and there hasn't been a major scandal, a major blunder. There have been no catastrophes, and he remains personable. He long ago rehabilitated his image with the public, and he communicates well. He's charismatic, and so there's not much to dislike. And of course, as we all know, any politician with an approval rating above 60%, that's big.
It's huge. It's unimaginable. Royce, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say is that I really don't like these polls that I think Angus Reid does, where they're comparing premiers, comparing their approval ratings. It really doesn't mean that much. And when you look at those things, the thing that really jumps out at you is that premiers that have been around for a long time, they tend to be less popular, whereas the newer premiers tend to have a higher approval ratings. As time goes on, you burn through goodwill, you make mistakes, you run into problems, and it hurts your approval rating. Wab Canoe is still very relatively new in the job. He is in the honeymoon period. And so I don't want to take too much away from him. Having an approval rating above 60%, as you both note, it's an achievement. It's quite something. But I think that over time that will get chipped away, just like it does for every other premier.
I mean, it has to get chipped away. He is a fantastic communicator, and you can't take that away from him. He's very good at communicating. He's, huge on social media, although wanting to be Captain Canada and using all these international platforms to promote himself, I have a bit of a problem with. I think that's a little bit hypocritical, but he is a good communicator, right? But you've got your finance minister, which is part of WAB, like that is part of his team, getting an F from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Our debt, the mission creep that's going on. Things are not better in Manitoba today than they were a year ago or 2 years ago. And that's when I look at these polls and say, well, what are you really basing it on? Like, this is that whole people tend to now look at a politician's popularity, or, well, at least they'll get us into the least amount of trouble and vote for them, or say that they're the ones that they want to pick. And I think that that's going to hurt us down the road. Yes, he'll go down in popularity. Something bad might happen. But really, when you look at our finances, you look at where we are financially, and you look at the trajectory we're on, it's not pretty.
No, and as I said, Kevin, I mean, the Canoe government, they haven't put the puck in their own net yet. But beyond that, as you said, our economics are not on solid footing. One of the ways that he has managed to maintain his popularity is he snuck a tax hike into the last budget without people really noticing that it was a tax hike. And that's bracket creep. And we've written about that in the Sun before, and we've talked about it before. It's a tax hike that people don't tend to notice very much. But you're going to take home less money as a consequence of this tax hike. I've also written about this week in the Sun about our long-term finances and the amount of debt that we have accumulated in the last couple of decades. And that's of course not all on Sala and Canoe, but it is staggering, the amount of debt that this province is in. And I don't see any evidence that they have any ambition to dig us out.
Yeah, we're early enough in the NDP's time in office that we can look for clues about things that will eventually dent the government's popularity and the premier's popularity. And these things that you both identified, I agree. But something else happened this week. It was very interesting. A candidate for the NDP in the last election, and I think a vice president for a region, actually resigned from the party. Chris Wiebe said he did it explicitly because of Wab Canew's comments about a pipeline to Churchill, and really was kind of giving expression to this view that the premier is governing as a centrist rather than on the left. And so Canoe has gotten away with a lot, in terms of talking about affordability, tax cuts, this pipeline thing, and eventually NDP activists and members are going to hold him accountable for that. And this last week, we started to see the first kind of glimpse of that. The premier's got to worry about his own party as much as he does about voters.
He talks about it a lot, but he's not taking any action on any of it, right? Like he's saying the things that he thinks people want to hear. It's putting him on the national stage. He's talking about these, Canadian projects. He's wanting to be Captain Canada. Whether or not he will fight for it is a different thing. But you're right. You talk about the debt, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because I just noticed in the federal side that our new prime minister is looking at adding another $500 billion in debt spending. He's just brought this forward. Here's our new prime minister who's talking about, cutting the expenses back, cutting back on certain areas, bringing our, costs down by 2% across the board. And out of the blue comes a motion or a bill for $500 billion. That is significant. That puts him ahead of Trudeau, I think, almost right away.
It's a staggering amount of money, and it's difficult. In fact, it's impossible for any of us to fully comprehend what those kinds of figures mean. Some of the long-term impacts don't get seen because the more debt governments get into, the more likely your credit rating is going to drop. When that happens, other shoes begin to drop. Pension plans start to get impacted by that sort of thing. Consumer confidence, investor confidence starts to drop. There's a lot of ripple that can go through an economy when a government overspends, just as we do in our own household. If we overspend in our own household, maybe that rickety banister on the front porch doesn't get fixed, or whatever. It's a silly example, I know, but things get ignored. And pretty soon you've got a whole lot of issues with your house. Maybe you need some new shingles, and maybe it needs some new paint, and but you've accumulated so much debt you can't afford to do any of those things anymore.
Yeah, and in 2024, I just looked this up. The government spent $53 billion just to service the debt. That's $53 billion that's not going to healthcare, not going towards the police, not going towards the military. It's a massive waste of money. And Mark Carney was marketed as the responsible economist who was going to get Canada's economic house in order. That is just not happening. Maybe we get a shift in the future, but I doubt it. We're very much going down this path that Justin Trudeau blazed for us, and the debt and deficit will get higher and higher, and eventually we will have to pay for it, or our children, or our grandchildren.
But are we shocked? I mean, Mark Carney was his financial advisor to Trudeau, and we're following the exact same plan. So, I mean, really, it's Trudeau 2.0. But, when you look back and you see where Carney was the last couple of years and who he was helping and what he was saying to Trudeau and what was happening, he's just following his same plan. And we all bought into it. We bought into it thinking, well, this is the guy that's going to do it. He was at the Bank of Canada. He was at the Bank of England or Britain. He's an economist. He's got a good education behind him, but he's a spend happy kind of guy. $500 billion. You don't have a budget, not coming out with a budget yet. And you introduce a bill for $500 billion in spending. That concerns me a great deal.
Well, he's not Paul Martin as a finance guy, that's for sure. He doesn't believe in fiscal restraint. And as a former Liberal cabinet minister said to me a couple of years ago, well, one thing we're good at is spending money.
But who's going to prop him up, right? Now we're going to get right back to where we were with Trudeau, and the NDP are going to prop it up, and they're going to allow it to pass.
Of course they are. The NDP is in no mood for an election, and they've only got a handful of members anyway, and they're going to. They might grouse about it publicly, but they'll go along with the ride. They'll go along for the ride.
Yeah, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm not surprised about it. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people that voted for Carney are. I think a lot of people thought they were voting for, as Jeff said, a Paul Martin style liberal, and that is not what we're getting. We're definitely not getting that. We're getting. I like that Trudeau 2.0. That's a phrase we should start using more of.
We'll start tweeting it out there or Xing it out. I don't know what they call it now. So I do see him as Trudeau 2.0. I want to talk a little bit too about who he's inviting to the G7. It's starting to turn into a slumber party. And I think the list will soon be who's not invited. How do we actually see this happening and some of the announcements happening at the G7? This is, as a prime minister, he gets to invite whoever he wants, but he's invited some controversial people already.
Hey, we're lucky we're in the G7. We're only the ninth largest economy in the world. We shouldn't even be in the G7.
Yeah, we also.
We're lucky to be there.
Yeah, you can see some early errors on his part too. He invited the Indian Prime Minister to Canada, and then a few days later, we read about how the former NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was under RCMP protection because he was being closely shadowed by an Indian spy, and it's shocking. I mean, why? How on earth are we not expelling Indian diplomats from this country? And we're not doing that. We're inviting the prime minister. It's quite shocking the extent to which Canada just gets stepped on by other countries in the world, and the extent to which the two liberal governments seem to be okay with that.
But I think here we go again, right? Because I mean, the popularity for Wab Canoe is very high. We just saw the popularity come out. Carney is now over 40%. Pierre Poilievre has dropped down below 25%. I think he was 23% on a Nanos poll. And again, we're basing this on not on any governance, not on any groundbreaking ideas to save the country, not on any moves to help us in our fight against Donald Trump. We're basing this on, he sounds pretty good in front of the media, or he's inviting some nice people, or he's had a good meeting with this person. We're basing it on popularity and not on governance or ability. And now it concerns me because when you see Mark Carney's numbers go up in those polls and you see Pierre Poilievre's go down, that means we could have another 4 years of this NDP liberal coalition. And I don't know if we can dig out of it after that.
Yeah, these polling things, and Royce alluded to this earlier, that these polling numbers have to be questioned because, I mean, on a rational level, because the metrics that are being used have nothing to do with reality. Right? It's a perception kind of polling. Do you like the look of this guy? Do you like his suit? Do you like his haircut? Does she come across well? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. And so if you peel back on some of these polling numbers and you look at the reality, the results might be different. Except that you can't get people to engage in that sort of thing. It's the inside baseball stuff that really determines the outcome of any economy and the well-being of any nation, but it's difficult to get people engaged in that.
Yeah, the election was a month ago. Everyone agrees that Mark Carney is the prime minister, that he won the election, and there's challenging circumstances. And so it's only reasonable that Canadians are going to give him a shot. They're going to give him a chance. But I mean, looking at poll numbers this far out from an election, it really is meaningless. I was surprised. There's a big news story headline about a poll. Does it really matter? Not really. As the election gets closer, the numbers will tighten up. It's the same thing here in Manitoba. So PCs are worried about their poll numbers. The next election is 2.5, 3 years away. It's not something I would be worrying about at this point. The opposition parties need to keep their eyes on the ball. And for the federal conservatives, that they have leadership politics going on right now. I wouldn't be too worried about these numbers.
So is that the problem in Canada? Opposition? because I think we have a bit of a lame opposition in Manitoba. We should be every day talking about mission creep. We should be every day talking about, it's longer now. Surgery times are longer. We're waiting longer for surgeries. Emergency room times are getting longer in Manitoba. Every single day that you're in the legislature, that's what you should be talking about. You should be talking about the core issues that we have in the province that we want fixed. If you're that party, if you're that fiscally responsible party, you should be talking about that debt every day. It's the same at the federal level. And I'm watching some of the question period and I'm seeing some of the remarks and some of the questions. And I'm thinking, look, we're getting back to playing games. Let's get down to business. Let's be true opposition when you're in there. Be that opposition and bring out the facts and figures so that we're hammering that away so that Canadians understand it every single day. You shouldn't just come out and say, well, we don't agree with spending $500 billion, so we're not going to vote for that bill. Tell me why. Give me the details on it. Share information with me. Get me engaged. Get me mad about it. But we're not seeing that from any opposition right now.
Well, that's because people won't listen to anything longer than a 7-second clip anymore. And you can't explain that stuff in 7 seconds. I think that's one of the real difficulties we have, that and the media is complicit in this, but the public's attention span is so short now that if you have to take 30 seconds or a minute, no newscast is going to give you a minute to explain something. Nobody's going to replay a clip from CPAC that's 45 seconds long. So it's got to be like 6-7 seconds. So it's got to be cutesy. And, Poilievre was good at the cutesy stuff, and so was Trudeau, but there's no substance there.
Yeah, for an opposition party, I think you do have to avoid the perception that you're playing games. And that's a tough thing. On the one hand, you want to attract media attention, you want to get coverage. On the other, you have to appear, as you suggest, Kevin, substantive. You're asking important questions, weighty questions. And so it is, being in the opposition, it's tough. Here in Manitoba, I think the PCs have some good critics, effective critics. They're on top of their files. I think we'll see their performance improve now that they have a new leader over time, and things will tighten up. I don't know if it'll be enough for the next election to win the next election, but I can see that happening over the next few months or next year.
Well, I have this very unique perspective, right? I was a politician. I was in the media for a very long time, politician very, very short time, and now back into the media. And I believe that the opposition can control the narrative and take that away from the government. And the opposition does that by continuously talking about the same thing. Look, when people do marketing, or when, you follow some of the more successful politicians, they keep talking about the same thing over and over and over and over again, because that's how you get it to set into somebody's mind. You have to keep talking about it and keep talking about it and keep talking about it. And if you're not doing that every day in question period, then the media is forgetting about it and going on to other things that you're bringing up. I think that's what I think where we are failing, not just in Manitoba, but maybe in politics, is we need to focus on the core issues of our country. We need to start talking about those so that we're giving the narrative to the media, not we, because I'm not in government anymore, but you're giving that narrative to the media saying, look, we can't afford another $500 billion in debt. Here's why. And keep bringing that up every day, day after day, day after day. And I guess that maybe we'll all differ on that, but I see that as a weakness in this country right now.
Yeah, and at a local level, there's a serious issue as well, and that is that from a media standpoint, and Kevin, you understand this better than anybody, perhaps, that the current business model does not permit media outlets to assign full-time reporters to places like City Hall or the legislature anymore. And there was a day not many years ago when every significant media outlet had full-time reporters at those places. So even if somebody gets up in the ledge and talks and hammers those messages every day, there's nobody there to report it.
Yeah, that's a valid point. But you got the government also spending a lot of their money on social media and on other platforms and on Facebook boosting and on Instagram boosting instead of spending it in local media.
Right. And so the opposition has to, if that's the way you communicate now, then that's what the opposition has to do too.
Yeah.
But it is good advice, Kevin. A great example is Pierre Poilievre and the carbon tax. I mean, he almost
Mhm.
single-handedly changed public opinion on that issue and had big influence. So, yeah, I think it's good advice. Pick a few issues, hammer away at them, be consistent, and don't give up. And opposition parties can shape the narrative that way. I think it's great.
I want to wrap up just wondering how long do you think it's going to be before Mark Carney calls the by-election so that we have an opportunity for Pierre Poilievre to get back into the Parliament building? Because he did say he would call it at the earliest possible moment, that he wouldn't play games with it. We haven't heard any news on it yet. I'm assuming you're the expert on this, Royce, that he could call it now if he wanted to, but then he wouldn't be allowed to do any spending and such. He would have to stop some announcements.
Yeah, the requirements, the whole blackout thing is my understanding is less stringent at the federal level than it is here in Manitoba. There's really stringent rules in Manitoba when there's by-election.
Mhm.
He said he would do it as soon as he could. I believe he has to wait a little bit. I can't remember the exact details of that, but he said he would do it as soon as possible. And I think he should. He should keep his word. He should present himself as someone who has nothing to fear from having Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons. If you delay it, if you play games with it, it makes you look weak. And so he said he would do it. He should keep his word. He should do it as soon as he can.
Yeah, it could be. It's unlikely you would do it during the summer break, but you never know. You might do that. Otherwise, you're having to wait till after Labor Day. But there's really no good time to call a by-election. But so he could do it at any day now. But yeah, he hasn't given any indication of when that's going to happen.
No, he's given no indication. I'm thinking he maybe is using this time to polish himself for being in question period. Because if you do watch him, he's a little off. He gets the heckling gets to him. He kind of will turn and smile. He'll stop. He'll give them acknowledgement, and that's what you don't want to do that, right? When you're in whether it's the legislature or in the parliament,
Mhm.
if people are heckling, you got to ignore it. It's like being a hockey referee. It's out of your head. It's out of your mind. You got to pretend like it's not
Mhm.
there and focus in on what you're saying. So maybe he's taking a little bit of time now to polish himself up, and then he'll call the by-election. Good discussion, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Look forward to talking to you again next week.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegssun.com for more.